Benchmark, the voice of business. Presented by LMD.
On this week's edition of Benchmark, our lead story checks LMD's online poll on the relocation of Colombo's poor residents. Then, in our feature segment, we turn the spotlight on Lakith Peiris, CEO of Lanka Hospitals, for his views on the state of the healthcare sector in Sri Lanka. And we wrap up this edition by bringing you some views on burning issues that were expressed on LMD TV. That's the lineup for Benchmark this week. Hello and welcome to Benchmark. I'm Anushan Selvaraja. We open our show today with a roundup of views expressed in opinion polls by visitors to LMD's website in recent weeks. One of the topics that drew a vociferous response was that of shanty dwellers being moved out of their homes and into apartments. While some thought it was a good idea, others wondered how well the plan might be implemented. As one observer points out, quote, most of the shanty dwellers that lived close to the canal in Colombo 6 were relocated to Mount Lavinia some years ago. The problem here is, it's an upgrade for them, but give it a few years and a few showers later, you will find these people in a worse situation than they initially were in, with the terrible drainage systems, flooding, and the people constantly falling ill. I think the big question here is, how good will these so-called apartments be? If it's going to be anything like the houses built in Mount Lavinia, then I think it's just a waste of money. However, I must mention that the idea is a good one, but implementation of these plans is questionable indeed, unquote. Meanwhile, another respondent who has lived in Singapore for many years shed some light on how Singapore tackled a similar problem. Quote, when they originally started building apartments, or housing estates as they are popularly known, Singapore too faced various problems, and one major issue was communal riots, where the Chinese community clashed with the Indian and the Malay communities. The authorities overcame this by proportionately allocating apartments to each community in each of the housing estates so that the Chinese, Indians and Malays could learn to live in harmony side by side as one community. And that is how the government of Singapore solved the communal riots plus their housing problems, unquote. The respondent to LMD's online poll goes on to say that the original apartments in the housing estates in Singapore have now been replaced with modern apartments with community development centers, 24-hour police posts, uninterrupted water, electricity and gas services, and a round-the-clock garbage collection system, keeping the common areas clean, neat and tidy. These housing estates come with adequate parking facilities, elders community care centers, health centers and playgrounds. And most often these estates are located close to major bus and train stations, cooperative stores and places of worship. It will be a long time before Sri Lanka can reach the standards of Singapore, but this could be the ideal time to start, by building some model housing projects, not just for the shanty dwellers, but even for others, suggests the respondent. Another poll participant draws attention to the spread of disease among shanty dwellers, as many live near canals and are more vulnerable to diseases such as dengue, she says. And what about the shanty dwellers themselves? How do they feel about relocating to new premises? As one respondent points out, most of the shanty areas are in the heart of Colombo, and many of these people don't like to move, even though they complain that nobody is looking into their welfare, as most of the resettlement areas are out of Colombo, he says. He adds that after the tsunami, a fair number of the people who were relocated returned to their unsafe homes as they didn't want to change their circumstances or leave the places they were used to. You too can have your say on issues such as these by logging onto LMD's interactive website, lmd.lk. Coming up after the break, we have an exclusive interview with the CEO of Lanka Hospitals, Lakith Peiris. Stay with us.